Voxroll's back. I broke one of these last year, so I thought it was only fair to eventually get to doing another run with the same knife, build up my sample sizes just a little tiny bit. So last time I got some, decently seasoned Australian hardwood, and I did a battening bit with it, and it had the following result. As you can see, the knife broke in two. So this is the same knife, just the different color variant, and with the micarta handles rather than the G10. So we're going to re-review it. Last time I did I did a little tiny bit of stuff with it, and then I broke it. So this time I'm going to do everything else with it, and then do the exact same thing, do some battening, and then see what happens. So this is a D2 steel, large to mid-size, I guess, survival knife. I guess if you think large survival knives are like your JX5s and your Trailmasters, it's definitely in the middle, about SE6, Falconeven A1 style knife here. So you get a full flat ground D2 tool steel blade. This one is powder coated. It feels very similar to like the SE powder coating or the K-Bar BK7 type powder coating, as in it's kind of rough, not DLC. And you get a finger choil there. You get some sort of sculpted three-dimensional micarta handles in this instance, or G10 handles if you go for the plain steel blade. Apparently you can also get this in SK5 steel, which I had no idea about, but one of my frequent commenters led on. So that's kind of cool. That's probably a bit more of a durable steel that will hold its edge for a less long amount of time. So anyway, I found that this is quite a successful knife on its own. Hey Cedric. I found this is a pretty successful knife on its own, really, in terms of just being in your hand and cutting with it. It's a really comfortable knife to use, and it has a really, really good design. And I've always thought that. It's, seems to have sort of integrity of materials. It's a very thick blade. I'll show you next to my A1 later on, but it's definitely not a thin sort of slicey knife. It is definitely quite robust. Not quite 1/4 of an inch, but definitely sort of 0.2 easily, if not 0.21 or 0.22 or something like that. So it's on the thicker side for sure, which is why I was a little bit bummed when it broke all those years ago. So that's the powder coat there. You can sort of see it does sort of grind off steel, but it looks kind of cool regardless. One of the best things about this knife is the grip. It's got a really nice, pretty neutral grip while still being an exposed tang. So I do prefer when my tang of my knife, which is like the steel part of the knife that goes all the way through, I prefer when that is enclosed in the handle, like is enclosed in like the G10 or the rubber or whatever. This one is not, but it's still fine. It's got a really sort of nice rounded sort of hand swelling feel to it. Very similar to my Greystone knife, which I'll show you a bit later. But then it's a little bit bigger, and it's also got the forward finger choil, which you can choke up on, as you can see. The knife grip is comfortable for both your finer carving work and also doing a bit of swing chopping style maneuvers, I guess you would say. So no worries at all in terms of its security. It does come with that little lanyard, which could be a little bit longer, frankly, but it'll still thread through the wrist if you really want. Let's test it on some stuff that isn't likely to dramatically foul the knife. So it does all your food stuff pretty well because it is a fully flat ground knife. The powder coating on this actually does help it pass through food without sticking to it as well. However, that powder coating will always sort of accumulate a bit more dirt and dust because it's sort of porous, if you get what I'm saying, like it's rough. So amongst all those rough little micro peaks and troughs, you'll get some grime. So if you're going to use it for food, just make sure you wash it. The factory edge came super duper sharp, and it has stayed super duper sharp just through my day of testing that I've given it today. And I've mainly tested this knife. I've tested this knife kind of before with the old one, although it wasn't extensive. So I've had two now, so I'm getting a pretty good idea of how they come. So and they do come pretty well finished from the factory. What I'm leaning towards is that the original example was perhaps a poor heat treat or something like that. I didn't know much about steels back then when I did the last one, so I speculated that maybe D2 was no good for fixed blades. Obviously I was shouted down for saying something like that, which is probably fair, because as I've seen in numerous others, it is a perfectly valid fixed blade steel. This has a really nice fine edge, and it's got a really nice grind. It's actually quite good at this sort of stuff, this shaving and whatnot. You can make a pretty mean feather stick with this blade straight out of the box, as I sort of have here. It's really, really maneuverable and really, really easy, even without using the forward finger choil, without choking up on it. So really, really happy with how it overall performs as an actual knife. It's only when you try and put it into those larger survival type tasks that I came into problems last time. And you know what? There's always that debate. Should you even be using your knives for that? I mean, me as a gear reviewer, I kind of think, well, whether or not we should or shouldn't, I just figure like you guys are watching my channel, so maybe I can do the stuff that you don't have to do with it, just to know you've got some faith in your products. That's kind of how I see it anyway, because I guess you could have a knife like this and you'd like to be able to put it into slightly exaggerated uses just on the spur of the moment without being so worried that it's frail. So I guess that's why like guys like me do the battening. I mean, in real life, I'd just take an axe or I'd just use something bigger. Or you know what, maybe I would just batten with the knife. I don't know. I don't really care. People get way too upset about it. They put way too much thought into it. But yeah, I broke a knife, but you know what? That was a knife I paid for, so I guess I was the sucker there anyway. So anyway, I have done a whole bunch of testing and that sort of thing on it. I made this nice little feather stick, but because of the powder coat, you can't strike a ferro rod with it at all. It's just not sharp enough. The powder coat rounds off the spine just a little tiny bit. You could probably remove it, but you know what? I have loads of strikers. Or, you know what? Cigarette lighters to make my fires. Yeah, I've sort of gone off using the hard ways of doing things when I'm out and about. But, you know, for the sake of review, people often want to know, it will not do that even when you use the choil. So you'd have to use the edge of the blade, which is a massive no-no, as we all know. So, battening. Not doing too badly, huh? So, you know what I've gone and done? I've found the exact same tree that killed the rolled last time and cut about as thick limb off of it. It's not as deep, but it is the same stuff, and it is even more seasoned. What do we reckon?
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again. Because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. And the vision that was planted in my brain
Too much? I'm just happy this didn't explode and die. So yeah, durability proven. I don't know. I guess always take into account that I did have one of these and it broke. And it broke like right in the middle of the blade, not near those big lanyard holes or anything like that. So yeah. But in terms of this one, I'm pretty happy with it. It seems to have done enough work for me to say that yeah, it's a competent and well built and well treated, I would suggest, knife, because that's some pretty hard, pretty glassy wood. And I know it seemed to go through there pretty easy, and yeah, of course, my battening technique's probably different. All of the micro variables. Anyway, that's next to a Falcon even F1. So you see, it is a big survival knife. Like it's a knife of about that size. It's almost as thick as the F1, the A1's stock. So and that's the next one, F1. Got my F's and my A's mixed up. So yeah, it's a proper sized survival knife. That's next to a Gerber Strong Arm, which is a nice, good, robust tactical knife. That's next to my Greystone Customs knife. So while they look similar, you'll see when I show you the stock, very, very different. So the Greystone knife is like a proper kind of camp cooking utility knife. That's next to a Cold Steel Viking hand axe, just to make you realize that there are bigger things than this, of course. Overall, I'm really happy that this Vox didn't explode. I'm really happy with the performance and everything else that it does. And I think it's actually a really good, really well done knife. It's just, you know, there's always going to be that doubt in the back of my mind about that first one, but if this was my first ever one and I hadn't had that previous experience, this would be a really, really glowing review. I've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed anything by Essie or by Caber, for sure. It's got a good handle. Only thing about it is it has one of the worst sheaths you'll ever use as well, so I guess you might want to do something custom, and this is like a common issue with the sheath. It's got a really rattly sheath that fixes weirdly on your belt. You can choose to either have it like horizontally, which is fine for some people, but you know, I generally just prefer like vertical but drop down. With this one, the vertical has to be like right up in your sternum. It's like an atomic wedgie, bushcraft world atomic wedgie, having a knife sheath like that. So anyway, it's not the best. It's Kydex, but it's just the clip system sucks, and it's just a bit rickety and rattly. You'd see it if you used it, and you can watch other videos on it, and also my previous review I go into it a bit more. But yeah, I'm still really not happy with the sheath. I think what I'll end up doing is getting like one of those generic nylon sheaths done for it, and then that'll make me happy, I'm sure. But overall, it's a good performing, good cutting, well done knife that, in this instance, didn't explode. So, what do you reckon? Vox rolled redeemed? We're at least halfway there, without a doubt. Thanks for watching, dudes. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.